Roblox Battlegrounds games as a genre is kind of dying, so today I decided to take a look at some of the previous top Battlegrounds games to see what went wrong. Subscribe to become OP. Starting with Eternal Battlegrounds, a game that was so unique that it ended up failing miserably. Eternal Battlegrounds was created by Baszucki, the deadbeat owner of YBA, so we could probably tell that this is going to be a disaster when he announced the Battlegrounds game to capitalize off the trend. The main issue with the release of Eternal Battlegrounds was all the crazy bugs that were in the game from day one and how unpolished the game was. Even before dropping Eternal Battlegrounds, the owner Baszucki decided it was a good idea to drop a trailer during their worst time possible. See, Baszucki also owns YBA, a popular JoJo game, and at the time, the game had been updated in literal months to a year. So him dropping Eternal Battlegrounds made that community that was already furious go into a frenzy and automatically assume Eternal Battlegrounds was a cash grab, which they were actually correct about. The trailer itself was just a cutscene and animation showcase that didn't really actually show off the flaws of the combat system, so everyone went to the game completely blind. Not to mention, the game got delayed and then dropped at its intended January release target, as Baszucki kept dropping sneaks instead of actually releasing the game and explaining himself for the delay, which is a classic Baszucki move. And that was also followed by a really long period of radio silence until the game eventually released on August 3rd, 2024. And as soon as Eternal Battlegrounds opened up, they were met with some of the most clunkiest combat systems probably ever in a Battlegrounds game. Like, I'm talking almost worse than pre-revamped Sorcerer's Battleground. And the parry worked against the flow of the game, completely stopping you and your opponent's momentum, making the game essentially into a parrying simulator. And the lag was absolutely awful. And the nail in the coffin was that you had to pay for characters with in-game currency that you could outright buy, which is a very strange system to put in a Battlegrounds game. You know, the genre that gives you most characters, excluding early access characters, for free. The game was then mass disliked, and despite their attempts to revamp the game, it was GG's for Eternal Battlegrounds. It's now pretty much abandoned, a true stain on Baszucki's already filthy reputation. Now onto Sorcerer's Battlegrounds, the OG of JJK Battlegrounds games. I remember this being one of the first Battlegrounds games to actually come after TSB, but back then the game wasn't really received well because compared to TSB, it was a very clunky and empty game. Nowadays, it has many characters from JJK Season 1 and Season 2, and the combat has also been revamped to be a lot better. But what went wrong with this game, and why has it declined in numbers so drastically? Judicial shenanigans pretty much killed this game before it was even able to make a comeback. There was also a period of time where the developers just stopped updating Sorcerer's Battlegrounds for a really long time, and for a game in this genre that might as well be self-sabotage because of these games in simple nature, they can become quite repetitive, and I think this is exactly what happened to Sorcerer's Battlegrounds. And then Judicial Shenanigans opened up in April of last year and took the Battleground genre by storm, and with its innovative destruction physics and gameplay that made most people who started with Sorcerers just end up switching over. Sorcerers, if we want to be honest, was just a worse feeling game than TSB and Heroes Battleground, so it was always behind those two in popularity. The owner also played a huge role in this game's downfall, as he last year went on a ban wave in his own Discord and basically for a little bit became an emotional tyrant that couldn't take people critiquing his game or his actions. So with him running the game, it pretty much spelled doom for Sorcerer's Battlegrounds. People just got tired of Sorcerers fully, and now I think it's actually over for any type of comeback since Judicial Shenanigans has solidified itself in the Battlegrounds community as the #1 JJK game and the #2 Battlegrounds game behind TSB. A sad but predictable outcome for this game. Now we have C's Battlegrounds, one of the only One Piece Battlegrounds games besides Fruit Battlegrounds, which, yeah, we're just gonna act like this doesn't exist despite it being the only one left alive. C's Battlegrounds downfall was only after the Gojo update, which was added to the game for unexplainable reasons other than developers being greedy and just wanting to make people grind for this character that had absolutely nothing to do with One Piece. The quests that were added were just nonsensical and made a lot of players upset, and the addition of an L, which was just absolutely broken. The balance of C's Battlegrounds was just out of the question, so the developers rushed the last few updates this game would actually get, because as of today, it has actually been a year since a proper update to C's Battlegrounds. Safe to say, Gojo and the Enel update pretty much killed the game. Who would have thought that adding a JJK character in a One Piece game that was only obtainable by the grindiest quest of all time would lead to this? Moving on to the potential man of Roblox, Realm Rampage. Now this game basically had the potential to beat out Judicial Shenanigans. It had characters from all over the anime scene, but still managed to fail, not once, but twice. Firstly, the game released to massive amounts of bugs, which took a while to actually get fixed, and then Aspector, who we will talk about more, decided he wanted to take large breaks in between updates, which of course were backed up by his lies upon lies he would tell his Discord to explain his actions, which then now led to a leadership change, which needed to happen. The guy was super egotistical and obviously had no passion or plans for Realm Rampage. Then the new developers tried to revamp the game, but the update basically didn't do much to improve of the game, and it basically was the same as it was before with a few basic changes to the way certain characters work, and they added fusions which were kind of mid in the way they were executed. So this update just upsetted the community even more. And then they added mastery quests, which sucked and basically didn't really change the specific characters outside of a few moves. Let's not even mention the fact that this horrible update took developers 10 months to make just for it to be a big nothing burger and a cash grab. Like, you can literally pay for that horrible Goku mastery that basically gave him back his old moveset, which is just extreme laziness. Why would you want to buy the old Goku moveset if the whole point of the revamp was to revamp his moveset? Literally makes no sense. And Geto just didn't get updated for some odd reason, and then they took him away from normal players. Yeah, just an absolute disaster, which led to Rampage flattening twice in the span of its 1-year lifespan. Moving on to 3 games actually: Z Battlegrounds, Key Battlegrounds, and DBZ Battleground. All these games that were handed the same fate by the same greedy developer that killed Rampage. Around the time that TSB released in 2023, other games started to pop up, one being a new Dragon Ball Battlegrounds game by the name of Z Battlegrounds, which had the same concept but with DBZ characters, so of course it garnered some popularity due to the newfound popularity of the Battlegrounds genre. The game itself wasn't as smooth as TSB, but it had acceptable combat. But DBZ was perfect for a Battlegrounds game, and more characters would be released along its lifespan. But as Z Battlegrounds was gaining steam, another game by the name of DBZ Battlegrounds would enter the Battlegrounds genre, challenging Z Battlegrounds' standing. But the owner P4K eventually became demotivated with the game for whatever reason, and he made one of the worst mistakes ever and sold the game to Phantom, another Roblox developer who was absolutely lost. And then he also sold the game to a group that would lead to Aspector finally buying DBZ Battlegrounds and bought out his only competition at the time, and ruined the game by adding rental characters that could only be used for an hour for 600 Robux, which would only be the start of Aspector's reign of terror, since he would then therefore leave the game to die and would steal assets from the game to import it to Z Battlegrounds, which was his plan all along. He even went as far as to prompt you to join Key Battlegrounds, another game he owns, after ruining this game. Key Battlegrounds was released at the start of January 2024, and this game was owned by Freedom, a close friend of Spectre, so you can see how this would go. But Key would finally be the DBZ game to replicate TSB's smooth combat, and that led to it becoming the #1 Roblox DBZ Battlegrounds game. And Key would also be co-owned by Aspector, meaning he had complete control over the DBZ subgenre in Battlegrounds games. He also started to turn on his own games like Z Battlegrounds, and as we know, he would abandon all 3 projects to eventually go on to make Rampage, which he also abandoned in the dust as we know now. The true Grim Reaper of Roblox Battlegrounds games, bro. Jesus Christ. Next is Fiction Battlegrounds. This game became hyped up probably due to the rise and success of the anime The Dandadan, and since it was the only game to actually add Okarun and the unique characters like Okuyasu from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and even had characters from video games like Cross Sands eventually being added as early access. This of course got people talking and making videos on the game, with some of the biggest being tough and Fate Unchanged. The main issue with Fiction Battlegrounds being the fact that the combat system was kinda clunky and the hitboxes were really rough around release, and that unfortunately kinda killed the game's hype before it really began. Unfortunately, like with most Battlegrounds games, the developers stopped updating it, but not for no reason. They eventually used the movement from Fiction to create Azure Latch, one of the best Blue Light games on Roblox. And next is Chocolate Battlegrounds, the only Naruto Battlegrounds game to really pick up pace on Roblox. This game at first had a lot of potential, with YouTubers like Fate Unchanged pushing it on his channel and building hype for the game. But when it released last year, it was a buggy and laggy mess, which really slowed the game down completely in terms of momentum. It wasn't a bad game though, it had tons of potential, just like content only having a couple characters, and that just won't cut it in the Battleground space today. Also, the update schedule for this game was extremely slow, and it seems to me Miss Demon aka Zabuza won't be getting finished anytime soon. An unfortunate reality for a Naruto Battlegrounds game that could have been really good. Soul Satters. Now this game had a really sad downfall due to the owner of the game being a predator. This is so common on a platform that I'm not really surprised, sadly. But Soul Shatters is one of the first genuine great fighting Undertale Battlegrounds games on Roblox, and was really creative with this combat system with some super cool combos that the community created. But eventually, after a while, the owner by the name of Oblivious Bunny decided he wanted to rework the game. And after the rework was done and the game made it actually a bit of a comeback, then eventually it came out that the owner of the game was talking to which is absolutely disgusting. And sadly, this will cause soul shatters to also disappear from relevance, as people did not want to be associated with this game any longer. A true shame and a very disappointing end to soul shatters. Now on to Fatal Combat, an actually really good Battlegrounds game with some amazing combat. How this game died? Well, I assume it died because of the lack of consistent updates. The game was actually not based off an anime like most Battlegrounds games are, and was actually based off Combat Gods, arguably the best stickman animation series ever created on YouTube, hands down. And they actually were able to replicate a lot of the moves that were done in the animation in Roblox pretty well, which was really cool to see because it was something creative, not something just thrown together with a random anime attached to it. But that might have actually led to its low player count, because most Roblox players nowadays really like anime, and when something isn't anime based, it tends to do worse historically. Now the developers are working on a new game, which I assume is another Battlegrounds game that they say will release soon, so hopefully that one will be able to have a little bit more luck than Fatal Combat. Last but certainly not least, the OG Elemental Battlegrounds. I used to love this game as a kid, coming home from school, mixing and matching different elemental abilities, and it was really fun. I was saddened that the developer of the game, Gamer Robot, who of course would went on to create one of the biggest One Piece games on Roblox ever, Blox Fruits, and would completely abandon Elemental Battlegrounds some years back. I really wish that he would have sold the game to someone a little more passionate about Elemental Battlegrounds, because who knows what the game would look like now, or maybe just make a whole new Elemental Battlegrounds. Like, imagine if we got Elemental Battlegrounds 2 with how Roblox is nowadays with all the combat systems and stuff. It would be super fire. But it still holds a special place in many OG Roblox player hearts, because it's probably one of the first Battlegrounds games to actually be really good back then. Overall, Battlegrounds games on Roblox unfortunately are mostly dying off, and that could be for a multitude of reasons. First off, people are just getting tired of the same formula where you have to play with the same characters and wait weeks, sometimes months down the line, just for a couple new moves to be added and rinse and repeat. Sometimes with these updates taking almost a year to be created. People's favorite Battlegrounds games like TSB aren't updating as much either, with YouTubers for the game dropping like flies, the developers not even communicating when a new update will drop. And this seems to be a problem everywhere in the Battlegrounds niche, leading to many Battlegrounds players being extremely upset. I even asked you guys if you thought Battlegrounds games were dying, and most of you said yes. And that just goes to show you how this trend of games are becoming a thing of the past, for this new, much worse trend of brain rot simulator games. But as I say in every video, if you guys enjoyed this video and like some more content like this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video. Peace.